Hello everyone, welcome to Ansarkari. So today we'll be taking up the newspaper for 6th October. So over here the first article talks about the Wayanad landslide. So this is the response to the landslide. It's talking about providing relief to those who were affected by the landslide. Now, talking about the landslide, so the Wayanad is a district of Kerala and it witnessed one of the most devastating landslide related disaster. So this happened due to extreme rainfall and fragile ecological condition. And this district, it received over 140 millimeter of rainfalls in 24 hours. Now, talking about what are landslides? So, landslide is basically the downward movement of rock, soil, and debris on a slope, ranging from small shift to large destructive events. And it can occur on natural or man-made slope and is triggered by factors like heavy rainfall, earthquakes, and volcanic activities, human activities, as well as changes in the groundwater level. So, if we talk about what triggers a landslide, so it could be rainfall, earthquakes, erosion, then factors such as hydrological factors, where groundwater movement can contribute to such risk and such that. So, the landslide which happened in Wayanad was due to the heavy rainfall, and this article mostly talks about providing us relief fund for the affected people and the affected area. Now, this article also further dwells into the problem of Wayanad only related to the Wayanad, and this talks about Kerala identifying risk zones. So, Kerala earlier was considered very safe with the sea on the west and the western Ghats to its east, and was relatively a disaster-free zone. But with the movements and developments coming in, the area witnessed a huge number of disasters and huge number of problems with the new mechanisms, the new problems which are coming in. For example, global warming or the rapid warming of the Arabian Sea, which cause the risk of extreme weather and climate events. Those may your heat waves, floods, and cyclones, and all of that comes in. So this article mainly talks about Kerala planning according to the disaster and it needing the people's participation and having proper disaster risk maps. Now, over here, to tackle the problem, Kerala can use community-based disaster risk management, where it can uh, collaborate with the local communities, with the local people, and it can together come up with something which would benefit. Now, this would provide opportunities. So, by coming in with community-based disaster risk management, it could strengthen communication, discussions, and learnings within the communities and between the community and the local and the central government. And this article mainly talks about how Kerala's geographic location lies and what are the problems related to that. So, इसमें Kerala has basically three distinct geographic zones, and all three are facing disasters. So this is especially floods and landslides. So it has coastal erosion, which is a regular formula phenomena which is affected the coastal length. And apart from that, it talks about key for problems such as landslides, inventory map, they are needed, and which would help or which would mostly tackle down problems such as revolve around rescue, relief, and rehabilitation. So it talks about having a comprehensive approach where all the aspects are addressed, such as of a disaster cycle, like preparing for a disaster, resilient system, risk reduction, mitigation, reconstruction, recovery, response, as well as relief. So, Kerala, it needs to work on the on the disaster risk zones specifically. And over here, a model was also suggested, like a quadruple helix model involving community and social organizations. So over here, the local community, the government, and business industry, they could be useful in creating such a model which would tackle the problem of disasters in the region. Assam government inaugurates 21 core districts. So this article mostly talks about Assam government coming up with core districts. So core districts, but they will basically serve a smaller administrative unit of the districts themselves, and they would be led by an officer of the rank of assistant district commissioner, and the functions that they will be carrying out would include land revenue matters, development, welfare work, excise, and disaster management work. So this would help take governance one step closer to people, and it would decentralize the district administration which is present. So core districts, they would basically help in ensuring implementation of the vision of minimum government and maximum governance, because the main goal is having maximum governance and not government intervention in everything. So core districts would give a more systematic planning of give a more systematic governance system, and it would make the government more easily accessible to the people. So this is what the article mostly talks about. Fragility of Western Ghats in mind, government panel to review pumped hydro projects. Now, hydro projects are basically projects which would involve a lot of changes, which would impact the place a lot, since it would include blasting, tunneling, diversion of forest land. It would impact the area a lot. And Western Ghats are more of a fragile area and lie on environmental sensitive areas. So they would involve taking water from the dams that are already over allocated. So now the government is planning to review the pumped hydro project, since Western Ghats are very fragile ecology. So now the hydro projects, they would involve two large reservoirs, one at the higher elevation and the lower elevation. So when there's low power demand, they would require surplus energy, which would use to pump up the water, and higher power demand to generate electricity. So and it would heavily impact the region, since Western Ghats are already fragile. So to tackle that, the government is planning to review the project that it earlier proposed.
So here we can say that there is a dilemma when it comes to ecological balance, because Western Ghats is one of the biodiversity hotspots versus the construction of these pumped storage projects, because these are important from the perspective of energy security. And we also had a question regarding this in prelims this year, that what is the purpose of constructing the pumped storage project. So it is related to storage of electricity and hence important for energy security. So when it comes to environment impact assessment, that is important, and that needs to be done again in a transparent and in an honest and ethical manner. Apart from this, we can say that already the dams that have been constructed before, how are we going to account for their impact on the biodiversity loss or habitat fragmentation? Or when we see that there is the water reservoir capacity reaches 100%, so water has to be released in a very short time span. So how we can better manage that? So in that context, we have discussed about the importance of again the Dam Safety Act, which needs to be effectively implemented. Periodic again assessments of the structure of the dams, because in India there are a lot of dams which are more than 100 years old. So it's important also from the perspective of resolving the interstate river water disputes. So role of Central Water Commission is also crucial here.
State governments to end systematic discrimination on in prison. So this article mostly talks about caste-based differentiation or discrimination that happens in prisons as well, and how earlier there was no such report, and it just recently came into light by the Supreme Court. So this talks about that how certain class was forced or was obligated to do certain jobs according to their caste, and they were expected to carry out their hereditary traits within the prisons as well. So, an example over here which was given was that the food must be cooked by a suitable caste and scavenger class. They would be assigned tasks such as manual scavenging, sweeping, or cleaning. So, this somewhere targets the fundamental rights of the prisoners as well. And um, it somewhere brings in light the discrimination also, which the constitution does not support. So prohibition of untouchability in any form and the abolition of forced labor and exploitation is the main goal. So the Supreme Court recently brought in light that we should prohibit caste-based discrimination when treating the prisoners as well. And this is what the article mainly talks about as well. Now, in continuation of the above article, this article specifically brings out open references which were being made in certain manuals. So, there's an example of the Uttar Pradesh jail manual, which made open reference to convicts of the scavenger class. So, this talks about the lower class expected to do all the cleaning and sweeping, and the Bengal jail code, which says that food should be cooked and carried out to the cell by prisoner cooks of suitable caste. So this somewhere brings out caste discrimination and how a certain caste is expected to carry out even in the prisons as well. And
Also, here we can see that certain states jail manuals, they were having this as a provision that caste based, it would be again one of the basis of again taking decisions. So this has been again identified by Supreme Court, and it has been upheld unconstitutional because firstly it is violating the human rights of as an individual. If we talk about, then we can say that it is violation of their fundamental rights, which is again under Article 17, which prohibits right to untouchability, and then Article 21. So Article 23 is also, in a way, it is talking about selective assignment of the menial jobs to specific castes, which amounts to forced labor. So this is Article 23. So we are having the Model Prison Manual of 2016. So there are certain gaps which has been identified in this in terms of addressing the caste-based discrimination, and we need to fully eliminate this.
temperatures, not rains, matter more for inflation rural demand. So this article mainly talks about how temperature affects inflation as well. Since temperature, rainfall of course affects the crops, but temperatures are far superior because here we're talking about the overall climate or the temperature that the area carries out. So when temperature is included, we don't analyze rain and the reservoir level, we analyze much more than that. So this article only talks about how temperature affects or brings changes to the food inflation, and rising temperature that could become a big problem for inflation management as well. And so we can manage rainfall. Rainfall can still be managed since if the area receives less rainfall, that could be managed out by irrigation. but we cannot treat high temperatures. We cannot treat uh, rising temperatures in such a way. So this article brings out the relation between average temperature that India usually has and the relation with the food inflation, which has been rising consistently over time.
Also, as it is stating that there is a non-linear relationship between temperature and food inflation. So that needs to be studied, the trend, what has been the trend. So here we can use the statistical tools, so data analytics, in order to again, when it comes to making agriculture sector also more sustainable, more precise when it comes to how the changes or how the challenges they are emerging, so in order to mitigate their impact. So overall it is, we are saying that why temperature changes are happening, it is because of climate change. So climate change, we can say, is the root cause behind again the changing rainfall pattern, or which is driving El Nino and La Nina conditions, and that is impacting the intensity of the southwest monsoon. So that is why for this also we are having different programs and policies. For example, when it comes to the soil health card. So properly studying here, the agri startups are helping the farmers in terms of deciding which fertilizer would be more appropriate, how much quantity of it should be used. Then in terms of the crops, which crop would be more suitable, what is the right time period to sow the crop given the changing temperature and weather conditions. So as it is stated that northwestern India is considered to be the food bowl of the country. So how again availability of water, or again this year we had one question even in the mains, that the depleting groundwater levels of the Indo-Gangetic belt, how it can impact the food security. So in terms of that also we need to study that the perennial river water flow, because of again fast retreating rate of the glaciers, how we can manage all of this, because everything is happening at the same time. And this is again everything is the being, or the root cause, as I stated, is the climate change, be it again the rate of increasing retreating rate of glaciers, or it is changing rainfall patterns. So more, we are talking about more precision agriculture, like we have different schemes. For example, per drop more crop is there, which is again talking about water conservation also. And then apart from this we can talk about again watershed management, where we can talk about the conservation of rainwater at the same time, because both, we can say, urban flooding and droughts are happening at the same time. So talking about again how technology can help us in the sense like we are promoting more of, for example, we're talking about the GM seeds, which are again climate resilient, or we're talking about millet cultivation.
या वेस्ट वाटर मैनेजमेंट की बात करते हैं, उसका यूज भी एग्रीकल्चर के लिए किया जा सकता है। इसलिए अगर हम अर्बन विलेज की बात करते हैं तो उनके लिए जो स्पेसिफिक स्ट्रक्चर बनाकर उस प्रॉब्लम को सोल्व किया जा सकता है। उसके साथ साथ जो उस वाटर का यूज है, जो अदर एग्रीकल्चर या कुछ अदर इंडस्ट्रियल यूज है उसके थ्रू किया जा सकता है, ताकि जो वाटर का टेम्परेचर हम देख पा क्वांटिटी हम देखते हैं डिक्रीज होती जा रही है, उसको भी कंजर्व किया जा सकता है।
Plugging the global skill gap. So this article mainly talks about the skill which is required. Now this goes above and beyond the degree, the normal degree that we hold. And this article mainly talks about how important it is to have skills. So in that context, it also brings out the government initiatives which talk about developing skills. So that would help Indian workers when in the current times when we're talking about developing or developed economies. And it also talks about migration. So there's permanent migration where they migrate from India, and the highly educated doctors or engineers, they migrate from India and go and settle in other countries. So that is indeed a brain drain. And the other talks about is circular migration. So where they workers, they go out, they either learn skills or they go for their studies or knowledge or whatever, and they come back to India after 5 years. And when they come back with enhanced experience of working and with sophisticated construction machinery and advanced management protocols. So that somewhere ends up in benefiting the industry or whatever industry that they would end up contributing in. And circular migration that would ensure that the movement takes place at a scale, and India would also gain from the experiences of such workers who return back.
So here we can say that the question is how we can ensure that circular migration is a success, or how, firstly, before coming to even this aspect, how we can prevent this brain drain firstly. So in this context, like for example, as a part of the new education policy of 2020, we're talking about the foreign universities setting up their campuses in India. And second, then we can state that how we can ensure that circular migration actually it is happening, because right now we are not seeing that the migrants which are going out of India, they are coming back to India after a certain time. It is only happening in the cases where the geopolitical situation it is becoming risky. For example, here it is also stated it is in Israel. So like we are having India and Israel is having again job agreements which are there, but right now the condition is again not safe for the people to work there. Then it is also stating that one of the global challenges is again for specifically the regions like Europe and Japan, where there is labor shortage, and particularly skilled labor shortage when it comes to the growing demand in sectors like algorithms for quantum computers or even building infrastructure and work in healthcare. So it is both low skilled and high skilled sectors we are which are seeing the shortage. And even for again the biggest challenge for Europe's largest economy will be growth constraints due to workforce shortage. So in a way, the we can say demand is increasing in other countries. So this raises another challenge for India, because again we are having kind of a surplus and skilled labor force. So here we can say the role of again the National Skill Development Corporation. So they have aggregated the skill gap demand for many of India's partner countries. So yesterday also we talked about again how government's scholarship scheme or the internship scheme are there. So internship with again collaboration with the private sector, that is helping in terms of on job training and learning with the experiences. Secondly, we talked about the employment incentive scheme which was recently announced in this year's budget. So even that is focusing upon how ITI sectors would be reformed in terms of better, they would be in like better sync with the skills which are in demand in the labor market or the job market. So that is also one part of the solution.
इसके अलावा बायलैटरल रिलेशनशिप के थ्रू भी किया जा सकता है, जैसे सिंगापुर के साथ सेमीकंडक्टर और जो अदर टेक्नोलॉजी है उनके लिए भी एजुकेशन पर्पस के लिए जो उनको स्किल किया जाएगा। और सेकंड है कि लास्ट सेशन में हमने डिस्कस किया था कि जो यूनिवर्सिटीज है वो रैंकिंग की तरफ फोकस करती है, तो उसकी वजह से जो स्मॉल कॉलेजेस होते हैं फिर जिन्हें अच्छी रैंकिंग नहीं होती, अगर वो क्वालिटेटिव एजुकेशन प्रोवाइड भी करवाते हैं तो उनकी तरफ से जो एक माइंड सेट है वो चेंज नहीं हो पाता, जिसकी वजह से इतने एडमिशन या फिर जो चीजें वहां पर होनी चाहिए वो नहीं हो पाती। तो उन चीजों को भी चेंज किया जा सकता है कि रैंकिंग की बजाय जो क्वालिटीज प्रोवाइड की जाती है उनके ऊपर फोकस किया जाए, ताकि उन चीजों को प्रमोट किया जा सके, जो फैसिलिटीज अवेलेबल है उनको यूज किया जा सके।
Also, there is one more trend which this article is talking about, the remittances inflow into India. So we see that particularly in countries like the Indians or the Indian diaspora working in US, UK, Canada, and Australia, they're contributing less remittances to India compared to the Indian workers or the blue collar workers working in West Asia, like countries of UAE, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Qatar, and Oman. They contribute 40% of the total remittances, whereas the workers in the advanced countries, they're contributing only 32%.
how Iran-Israel war can hurt India. So this article mainly brings out how Iran and Israel war can have the impact on India. So talking about the impact on India, this could mostly impact the trading routes. So especially the Red Sea area shipping route, which could remain inaccessible to the global shipping lines for a longer duration. And even for trade with Europe, we rely on the Suez Canal and US, Africa, West
Before
Asia.
Europe, before talking about Europe, it is talking about Iran-Israel war. It can how it can hurt India. So the most crucial thing for us is crude oil imports. So if the prices spike up, which we are seeing also in the past 1 week, the prices have increased by almost 5 to 6% when it comes to crude oil. So it would be leading to imported inflation in India, because right now we are not having any other option when it comes to the sources of energy generation. So that is why even the self-reliance in this, in terms of generating the domestic capacity for renewable energy, becomes crucial. But again, that is a long-term thing. It cannot happen over a short time period. Again, there are certain, again, its own challenges. For example, it is capital intensive, there is high gestation. So that aspect, again, India is focusing upon that, but for the current time, this is going to be the major challenge for India. And second would be in terms of the, as you were stating, that the trade routes would get impacted, the security of the trade routes. Plus, yesterday I mentioned that we are taking the longer trade route when it comes to the trade between India and Europe, that is from the Cape of Good Hope near the South Africa. So because of the longer trade route, the freight cost have also increased by 15 to 20%. Apart from this, we can state other reasons which are mentioned in this article. So we can continue, Dia.
Then it also talks about how it could impact the India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor Plan, which was proposed in the G20 summit last year. So the plan was aimed at having a faster route which would connect India to the Gulf region and the Europe. And it would also reduce the dependence on the Suez Canal, but with war erupt, if it could lead to war in West Asia, so that could also develop. This plan would also be disruption, would face challenges.
And one more impact would be on the India's investments. For example, if we are having again certain possibilities that if Israel it attacks Iran's ports, or it will be impacting again the energy supplies and its nuclear establishments. So firstly is again the time period of this war, how long it would be further extended. And in terms of like India's investments in ports, is the example is Chabahar port in Iran.
इसके अलावा जो लोग ईरान इसराइल में जॉब करते हैं उनके लिए भी इश्यूज क्रिएट हो सकते हैं, फिर उनको किस तरह से
Safety of India's diaspora is very important.
The future of work. So this article mainly brings out how with artificial intelligence and with development coming in, how that could critically impact other areas. So now this is mostly talking about how it would result in a huge shift. And since when we talk about work, that is very much influenced by supply and demand side. And supply side may be factors such as demographics, migration, public health, cost of living. So this article basically talks about how on the demand side, mostly technology is playing a very important role, and AI and automation, they're taking up the over routine task, making roles which require creative and emotional thinking. So they easily take up those roles. So since we're adopting AI a lot in with the large scale adoption of AI and automation, that results in production processes becoming more agile, cost effective, and high yielding. So, this increasing impact of technology leads to new work models in form of remote work and gig economy. So, which this ends up creating a shift towards more flexible and inclusive labor market. Now, it also has impact on the competency development. So the traditional roles they get disrupted, of course, with AI taking up most of the work. So they would need to consist the workers. They would require to consistently upskill and reskill. So the skills they would need to work more on their skills rather than just having knowledge. And even in the field of governance and policies, which would include encouraging learning and competency building. So that would ensure social protection systems and having an environment where new industries they can also thrive. So this is mostly what the article is talking about.
And also, it is talking about India's digital public infrastructure. So this is again one of the major developments when it comes to even creating that entire ecosystem around it. For example, as we are shifting in the labor market and we are shifting through these challenges, so development and integration of these digital and open source infrastructure, it is important for fostering inclusive growth. So everything that we're talking about, for example, related to technology, so India Stack initiatives, or when it comes to the Aadhaar enabled or Aadhaar seeded data, then we have UPI. Recently, we're talking about, again, apart from Jam Trinity, we're also talking about the new element which is RBI is talking about is the ULI, which is Unified Lending Interface, which would be ensuring seamless availability of credit at competitive cost. Then Karam Yogi Mission, that is again, there's again a dedicated platform to this, aims to democratize learning and improving the competencies of the public servants, enabling them to remain adaptable to face the future challenges. So we can talk about both public sector and the private sector, and in terms of again simple understanding of the workforce also, we can say that lifelong learning, it must be embraced as a way of life. Learning never stops irrespective of your age. So this can better help us in terms of uh, achieving the developed country status by 2047.
Our mothers fail dreams for rise of Wayanad as women cricket nursery. So now this article mainly brings out how sports and how two of Kerala's three women cricketers have who have represented the country are from the remote districts of Wayanad, and how we have a lot of talented sportsmen or in other fields as well, and how they would how we can make development or how we can make
So we can take this up as an ethics case study also and related to women empowerment. So we look at key phrases in this article. Firstly, we see that turning the disappointment of the trials into an opportunity. So whenever again there are challenges, difficulties or disappointments, we need to think about in a positive manner and convert them into as an opportunity. So it is the difference is merely the perspective from which we are interpreting things. So what happened in this case study was that again the person is KM Elsama. So her daughter failed a selection trial, and that is that was the thing which triggered her, or which led her to take further decisions in a positive manner. So two of the Kerala's three women cricketers to have represented the country, they are from the remote district. And this is also one of the popular tourist destinations as well. So Wayanad is the district that we're talking about. So it is the Sajana Sajivan and She's also been the part of India's Women's World Cup squad. Then her daughter failed the trials. Bernard did not have a district team at that point of time. So her daughter, she was a wanderer of sorts, turning up for different districts. But again, the thing is that she didn't stop. She kept trying, and again, that small things adding up led to such a big contribution. So it is stated that women, they are usually married off when they turn 18, and even last census, when we talk about 2011, puts the female literacy rate in the district at 80%, which is far lower than the state average. So it is particularly about the Kerala state, which is again, overall, if we look at this figure, it is very high compared to India's literacy rate when it comes to different states. But despite this, having again, we can say that this is the dilemma, that despite 80% also, if the literacy rate is 80%, still the element of patriarchy that exists. So that social behavior or the social reforms, they are very important, and accepting them in the daily life is crucial to bring a grassroots level change. So even women coming forward, this is a very strong and important case study also. Other women can also learn from her journey, and if they come forward, definitely we can see positive changes happening even at the society level.
This article talks about the National Mission on Edible Oil. Now, this mission is basically aimed to achieve objectives. So, it would basically promote adoption of high yielding and high oil content seed varieties, and this is towards reducing the import dependency and achieving self sufficiency when we talk about edible oil. Now, talking about this scheme specifically, so that is mostly aimed at boosting the oilseed production in the country from the current level of 12.7 million. And it would basically focus on enhancing the production of oilseeds, let's say rapeseed, mustard, groundnut, soybean, sunflower, and sesame. So, other things that the scheme would do is currently the area under oilseeds, so that would be increased to 33 million hectares from the current of 29 million hectares, and that this would basically increase the oilseed production in the country. And even the how the agriculture scheme will be put in two main
So
categories.
particularly, we are focusing upon the high yield variety seeds, and that is through the cutting edge global technologies. For example, genome editing. So in genome editing, we use CRISPR-Cas9. So in this, again, one more important reform or the methodology that has been introduced is the Sathi portal. So what is going to be its objective is that it will be introducing an online 5-year rolling seed plan. So, seed plan is what we're talking about through seed authentication, traceability, and holistic inventory. So, this would be the Sathi portal. So, this will enable states to establish advanced tie-up with the seed producing agencies so that again we can ensure the cost competitiveness for the farmers, easy availability of the seeds, and that too of high quality. So overall it can help in making the agriculture sector more competitive and more productive at the same time. So it would be including cooperation with the cooperatives, farmer producer organizations, and government and private seed corporations. So equitable benefit sharing is what we can achieve through this. Apart from this, the mission also envisages 65 new seed hubs that we're talking about. So agri startups can participate at a larger scale. We can include, or we can see the contribution of even youth, or again more of research and development as we're talking about. So more climate resilient seeds can come up in future. And another would be the 50 seed storage units at the same time, in order to again store them safely, so that again we are not having supply side issues when it comes to the availability of seeds also, because then it also impacts the price of the seeds. So seed production would be improved, the seeds quality would be improved, infrastructure would be improved, and overall, through this, we have the vision of creating 600 value chain clusters. So cluster-based development.
The war on sickle cell disease. So, this article mainly talks about sickle cell disease and how this disease has remained a challenge over the years. So, the main problem is that the medical students or young doctors, they require adequate training to recognize and treat the sickle cell disease. And basically, the lack of awareness as well as testing facilities that also further contributes to the problem. So, that ends up in many undiagnosed and many untreated cases. So, talking about sickle cell disease, now
So
this is
it is a genetic disorder, and simply if we talk about what changes actually happen, so there's this gene which mutates and that encodes the hemoglobin. So because this the the normal red blood cells, they have a circular shape. So in case of sickle cell disease, they take the shape of a sickle, as we say that we can relate it to the moon shape or the sickle that we use in farming. So because of which the blood is able to carry less of oxygen. So that is one of the repercussions of this disease. So because of which we see even blockages in the blood vessels and reduced oxygen delivery and damage to tissues and organs. And when it comes to inheritance, so it can be inherited when both the parents carry the defective sickle cell gene.
stem cells to fix type 1 diabetes. Now, this article mainly talks about type 1 diabetes and how stem cell therapy could somewhere, be could treat type 1 diabetes. So, type 1 diabetes basically where the immune system, it attacks insulin producing beta cells of the pancreas, which ends up in diabetes. And the stem cell therapy is basically where it talks about regenerative medicines and pre-programmed cells. They are inserted in the body and they start producing insulin, which helps regulate the glucose. Now, talking about challenges with this therapy, then um, they the newly transplanted cells, could be prone to rejection by the body, and that would require long term immune suppression, which could cause infections as well as cancer. So, um, transplanted cells that could carry a risk of rejection in the long term. And this is what the article mainly brings out, how stem cell therapy could be a possible treatment in type 1 diabetes. And
So when we're talking about stem cells, so we need to know different types of stem cells which are there. First is the embryonic stem cell. So as the name states, so it is derived from the early stage embryos, specifically which are present in the inner cell mass of the body. So when it comes to their potency level, how they can help. So they are pluripotent. It means that they can differentiate into many cell types of the body, and it is to the tune of 200 cell types which they can differentiate into, but they cannot develop into an entire organism. So it is related to only a particular organ or tissue. So, second type is the adult stem cells, which are also known as the somatic stem cells. So, these are found in special tissues and organs of our body. For example, most prominent is the bone marrow, which we talk about. It can be in brain, skin, and liver. So, these are multipotent. Multipotent means that they can develop into limited range of cell types related to their tissue of